You're tuned in to the Zelos Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder, and this week, Mike Brown's with me. He's with FC Cincinnati. He's all about the academy teams. He's a physical development coach for all the ages. But before we get started, check out my website, rockysnyder.com, for my training services, continuing education, blogs, podcasts, archives, and you can check out some things that you could purchase, perhaps like the wedge kits. They're coming out, and they are actually all out, and they're selling fast. You can get them at performbetter.com. And while you're on their website, check out their 3-day functional summit happening in June, July, and August in Chicago, Long Beach, and Providence, Rhode Island. While you're at it, Setanta College is the place to go for a Master's of Science, finishing up mine in sports injury and return to performance management. If you add RS10 when you sign up, you get 10% off tuition. Check out the NSCA's National Conference coming July 16th to the 19th in Kansas City, Missouri. A great way to network and learn a whole bunch of things. Now, Instagram is the place to go if you want to connect with me at Rocky_Snyder. Click the subscribe button and enjoy the show. Well, Mike, thanks for coming on, Zelos. I've been looking forward to this conversation because, a few weeks back I had Diego Martinez coming on with New York club, but now we're in Cincinnati and long-term athletic development. We're going to talk all about that and a whole bunch more. So, hey, welcome to Zelos, man.
Thank you for having me, Rocky. I'm honored to be here tonight and just have this conversation with you about what we're doing here at FC Cincinnati's Academy.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I can't wait. This is going to be a lot of fun. But give the listening audience, if you don't mind, a little background about yourself. I know you spent some time at Temple and a few other places, but how was the path? Did you grow up playing football, soccer, football, however you want to call it? What did you grow up playing?
Number of different sports I grew up playing, but I grew up doing track and field back in like 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. Then I found a passion for soccer pretty late, I would say, like freshman year of high school. I stepped onto the freshman team. That was like the first time I ever kicked a ball. So I kind of learned the sport at a late age, but I kind of found a love for it because I was not very big. So I was thinking maybe I would play American football, but my size and weight just didn't allow it at the time. So I found another sport, soccer, tried it out, fell in love with it. I learned very hard and grew an appreciation for hard work and dedication to learning all the skills needed to excel in the sport. So I spent so much time just trying everything I possibly could to get better at the sport, spending time with the best players, just asking them questions. How do you pass a ball in the first place? How do you read the game? How do you do all these different things? So I just grew an appreciation for that. And later on in my high school career, became a captain for my track team during my senior year. And I did 400 hurdles, 110 highs. And I just fell in love with the process of just working hard every day through the gym workouts that I would do, through all the training sessions I would do in track and soccer and all those different things.
Great. And then did you happen to carry that on at Temple University too? Or was it more club-based or intramurals, or were you on any of the organized teams there?
Yeah, and just carrying on from that, I did rugby when I was going through community college in Raritan Valley, New Jersey. So I played for Princeton Athletic Club. Then I eventually
Nice.
transferred to Temple University to finish off my bachelor's degree in exercise and sports science. And over at Temple, I was playing club rugby for them. So just playing as a fullback, a wing, inside center, outside center, whatever. I fell in love with that sport too, because there's just so many athletic components, just kicking a ball, throwing it backwards, just reading
Yeah,
all this sorts of components of the games,
it sounds like we have something in common. We grow wider than we do taller, so we can hit low. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm all for that. It's apparently a safer sport than American football, which is crazy to me because of the lack of pads. Some people like the scrum hats, it makes them feel good, but yeah.
And do you follow the sevens, men's or women's?
Yeah, loved playing sevens back then. It was probably my best sport, I would say. I was good with my pace and enjoyed running all over the place. I loved playing sevens. It was absolutely great. It's absolutely
So
awesome.
And then how did you land the gig at FC Cincinnati? I'm sure there was a few things that were in between once leaving Temple and so on, but how did you manage that?
A lot of different routes, a lot of appreciations for my mentors. So I started out at Reach Your Potential Training with Bobby Smith in Tinton Falls, New
Oh, no
Jersey.
kidding.
Yeah, he's big part of like what I do here, just teaching the fundamentals, the basics, bringing that energy every single day with all my training sessions. He's the pinnacle of high energy. If you've ever met somebody,
Oh yeah,
deep
Bobby's a good
appreciation for
guy.
him. Yeah, he's
Heck yeah.
amazing. He started out with Adam Fight, and
Uh-huh.
him and Adam Fight are just brilliant minds, and it's just awesome to get to know them over the course when I was an intern there in 2019. Then did an internship with Olympic sports and football at Temple for a bit. COVID unfortunately happened during that time when I was interning for football. Then I decided to take my Toyota Corolla all the way out to Denver, Colorado with Isaiah Castilleja when uh, I was at MSU Denver. So for 5 months, we were going through the COVID protocols of just training 5 athletes per half hour at a time. So that was a
Wow.
very interesting experience. So all
Oh,
five of us interns plus Isaiah and Jordan at the time train these athletes as hard as we can and just giving the best internship experience they possibly could for us. And they did a great job with us, I would say. And they helped me out with the interview process, building a portfolio, and going through that whole process of getting a graduate assistant position with Temple. And then eventually, long story short, got a full-time position at LaSalle University where I oversaw men's and women's soccer, cross country, track and field, and men's and women's rowing. And I knew I had a deep passion for soccer because while I was in Philadelphia, doing my graduate assistant at Temple, I met Walter Grandis because he sent out an email asking Tim Teefy at the time if there was interest from his class of interns that he possibly had to possibly help out at Philadelphia Union. So I just did a site visit just to see if they needed help. They didn't have availability at the time because my schedule was kind of packed, but I maintained a relationship with Walter, and he's another person I talk to pretty frequently about sports science, uh, what he did back in Philadelphia. And he was a big reason why I got this job at FC Cincinnati. I would contact him about what I should put in my portfolio. What are the messages? What do I need to know about what it takes to run a successful performance side in the academy?
oh, that's fantastic, Mike.
Yeah,
And uh, just a side note here for listening audience, you mentioned a couple people already that if you go to the podcast archives, Zelos, and look up Bobby Smith or Adam Fate, actually Adam and Mary Kate, his wife, had them on. We had some great conversations. So you can kind of backtrack there and you'll understand why Mike's talking highly about all of them. So fantastic, man. What a great path. And this is not unusual. In fact, it is, I won't say cookie cutter because it's not like that, but there's similarities to paths of the guests that I have on. One, they look for opportunity. They don't say no to it. They make their way along a path through the help of mentors and gain guidance and are willing to learn and be okay with traveling and it sounds like you did exactly all of that. So now you're at FC Cincinnati. You are the development coach for their academy, which is U13 to U18. I imagine you don't have necessarily campus dormitories. These kids are going to school, and then after school, mom and dad are dropping them off with you in the afternoon, and you're training them. And am I right on that so far?
correct. You've missed nothing, so you're doing great so far.
All right. So then with this, is it like U13, U15, or is it U14, U16, U18? Like you have 2 year gaps in between, or are they individual years like U13, 14, 15, all the way up?
Yeah, so we have U13s, U14s who pretty much train together. So we have one field for 5 of our academy teams. So we have U13, U14, U15, U16, and U18. U18 and U16 are our pro player pathway teams that we do the very best that we can to prepare them to enter in the pro player pathway of entering in the second team that we have here in the first team environment. So doing everything that we can to prepare them from a physical perspective, and our awesome coaches here prepare them on the tactical side to basically follow suit with what they're doing with the first team principles, just teaching them everything that they can to emulate what they're doing at the first team level, the formations, the principles of play, and all those sorts of things.
Okay, so with one pitch and five teams, five age grade ranges, you must have to stagger the schedule out. So while one group is potentially doing strength conditioning in the weight room or off pitch, you got some the other ones that are doing like situational work or practice on the pitch. Is that about right?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a little rundown of what our daily schedule
Please,
looks like just to make it
I would love
easy.
it.
Yeah, so with our U18s, they are usually our first group that goes from 4 to 415. It's a larger group, roughly about 30 to 36 players at a time. But sometimes there's a lot of movement, thankfully for our club, because those players have been getting opportunities to train up with our second team, our first team, and so on. Then our second training block is from 5:30 to 6:45. That's usually our 15s and 16s or 13s and 14s. Then our last training block is 7 to 8:15. Most of the time 13s and 14s, sometimes 15s and 16s, depending on the days.
Wow. Okay. So you've got your conveyor system going. You must speak of systems. You must have some really how would I say it? You like um you like systems maybe sticking to the schedule. I can see you being a very regimented individual and am I right there?
Yes and no. Obviously, it's good to have a regimented schedule, but it's so important in this field to adapt to change. Because most of the time, a lot of times, like just today, for example, we had a weather delay. So we kind of have to think on the fly. When do we bring these players back into the gym to do some activation? When do we possibly think about rescheduling some gym sessions so that it aligns correctly with when they're going to play their matches? When do we test them to see what kind of progress they made? So we ask ourselves these different questions, but we always base it around their playing schedule, because for me and all of us with the medical side for the academy, we always want to make sure that they are playing at the highest level possible for all of these games, but got to develop them too. Multifaceted, objective that we are trying to accomplish here, but we're ambitious and always work hard to achieve everything that we need to do.
Now, uh, with this group of young players, there is going to be obviously different developmental stages and rates of growth, and physically, mentally, emotionally, of course, too. We can't discount that at all. But do you find that some players actually go up in the brackets in terms of the age brackets, some drop back down, or do you keep them primarily within their own rooms? How does that work?
Just like I mentioned before, it depends. Everybody has different timelines with, their puberty, their skill level of play, all these different factors. We have a couple of players that have trained a couple of ages up because they can handle that kind of skill level, the speed of the pace with the speed of play for that typical age group. So some of those players have seen those opportunities, and sometimes with our U18s and U16s, we'll do a combined session. So speed of play could be a bit faster for those U16s. And we even have a couple of U15s that have gotten opportunities to, potentially train up with the second team, which is tremendous. So when we're looking at that from a sports science perspective, we use player data, and with the speed thresholds, we keep them exactly the same as the first and the second team. Looking at like zone 5 and zone 6, Zone 5 being 19.8 kilometers per hour or 5.5 meters per second. Zone 6 entering sprinting speeds, 25.6 kilometers per hour roughly, or 7 meters a second. So we're doing that because now we're in a position where maybe some of our 15s, 16s, and 18s could be called up, and we want to make comparisons of how they're doing from a physical perspective and if they can handle that opportunity if they were called upon.
Okay. So, of course, you're throwing out terminology as zone 5, zone 6 with certain speeds. Therefore, you're using GPS, which is obvious. PlayerData is the company that you're using, and they have vests with little electronic inserts into the vest. Is that how it works with them?
Correct. So we currently have about 75 to 76 units that we use on a daily basis. Some of our U14s use them, all of our U15s, U16s, and U18s are tracked. So we're able to individualize players from that perspective and see, okay, did this individual get a lot more than the group? Do we need to reduce the load and so on? And we can even use this topic into rehabs, like return to runs, return to plays. This is where it gets very good for us, so we can individualize it for that player and base it off of what they've done in the past with previous trainings, previous matches, and so on, so we could prepare them for those opportunities when they come back.
How do you create those parameters? How do you create those markers, if you will? I know there's enough data there to back it up now that GPS has become something we've been using for, well, several years now. Not a whole bunch, but there's enough data points. But in regards to the different age groups, and let's just take load management. That would be a good example there. How do you determine uh, proper the Goldilocks spot for load management when it's not too little, not too much? How do you develop that and home in on that?
The fascinating question, but I always talk to Phil, Costas, and I talk to them daily about, what we should target with these different age groups. So if we go on a weekly schedule, like a match day -4, the theme of that day is just working on accelerations and decelerations and maybe smaller pitch sizes. And then our -3, it's where we can go out a bit and make that a bigger session and get some high speed running into those days and some sprint distance. Maybe you're looking at like 50 to 60% of what you would get of high speed running and sprint distance compared to what you would get in a match. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah. So match day -4. I'm assuming you're just playing on the weekends. You've got one match a week then.
Well, that would be
Uh,
ideal, but
uh,
sometimes we play double
yeah,
fixtures.
you
So,
do.
mhm.
Okay, so let's just take match day -4. You have them playing small sided. You're getting them into short distance sprints, but then you open up the field on match day -3. Um, have you found that to be the best recipe rather than flipping that around and having them do uh, larger distance on match day -4 and then short sprints on 3? Like, do you develop that? Does the coaching staff develop that? Is that just something that within the uh, the overall governing association has suggested? Like, how do you determine the volume on those days?
So going back to like all those different kinds of things that you're talking about, there's a resource that's really good. I believe it's called Peak Performance by Alex Calder, and a bunch of practitioners contributed to this resource. And they talk about what other professional football clubs and even academies do from that weekly periodization. So they talk about those different themes and even talking about different articles on Sportsmith, basically talking about where adaptation can occur on the -4 and the -3. So going bigger on the -3 is definitely more advantageous so that You could give them enough time to, at least experience that adaptation and kind of, get into that kind of thing. And then on that -4, I typically do this. I pair that off with a gym session for our U18s and U16s and our U15s. And actually, I'm sorry, not our U15s usually, but that's just dependent on our schedule. If I could, I would, but our schedule does not allow that. But for our U18s and U16s, I have a gym session, so I'm doing compound movements on those days. And then when I'm going into a -3 with our guys, we're doing Nordics, Copenhagen's, or you could go lower eccentrics and just get some groin work in to pair that off with the sprint volume that they'll experience. And then on the -2, where they're doing reactive components, like a warm-up can look like this. You could do handball just to break up the monotony of soccer, or you could do ultimate frisbee, making sure that they can actually throw a frisbee correctly. It's a hard skill. You can do anything really, 1v1s, 2v2s, partner tag, chasing each other, things along those lines, just making it fun. Because at the end of the day, these are young athletes, they want to compete. So just throwing in those kinds of things will get them going on those matching -2s. And I throw in another gym session for our U18s and U16s, just doing like lower body accessories, upper body accessories, and so on. And then on
Right
our
on.
-1, if we train, that would be like a primer, but sometimes we don't train.
Oh, very cool. Okay, well, you mentioned some great resources, Sportsmith being one of them. For the listening audience, if you're not familiar with Sportsmith, great conference, typically over in the UK in previous years, but it just so happens they're going to be on the West Coast in June, at the end of June. I think it's like the 28th or 29th in Los Angeles. And there's still registration available. And so, it's about a month away or so. So check it out. There's some really great presenters, including one of my buddies, Lauren Lando, who's been the head strength coach this past year for Notre Dame. Prior to that, he was with Denver Broncos. He's going to be one of the presenters. So if you get an opportunity to go there, it's like drinking from a fire hydrant. Okay, so what about outliers? Because I'm always, yeah, I don't know. There's great recipes for success. And there's always those, especially like in the field of data mining and sports science. There's always one of those that make you scratch your head like, okay, these are not falling under the typical characteristics. And this guy is just blowing doors here, or vice versa. Tell me about, like, give me a story if you don't mind. I'm sure you have one about finding outliers within your data structure.
I mean, we talk about evaluation. So
Yeah.
another metric that we measure is PHV, and we look for late developers or early developers, whatever the case is. We get an understanding of where they're at in terms of their puberty, when they're going to enter their growth spurt. So we're keeping an eye on that. Just having an understanding of when they're going to enter those
I don't
phases
think
of,
I have yet. I think my peak height velocity has yet to occur. Just so you know, just for anybody
yeah,
else.
yeah, me too. My girlfriend Natalie, she makes fun of me for that, but that's all right.
Yeah,
So
somebody's got to look down at you, but that's all right. I'm just kidding, Mike.
for
Okay,
sure.
cool. What about like performance or something where you're going, I can get more out of this athlete, and we're throwing things at him like we're doing with everybody else, but you get a sense that they can handle more. Or just the opposite, you're like seeing these numbers kind of drop and going, okay, something's going on. We got some overtraining, we got some mental emotional stuff going on in the homeland or at school or whatever. Those markers start popping up. um, it, it, I know it happens, but how often do you see that amongst the group that you're with?
I mean, that's a thing that we talk about with our players. I always want to have open dialogue with all of them, even with our medical side with Rio, Doty, and Brett. we always want to have open dialogue with them just to get an understanding of where they're at on a daily basis. So like on the days where I take them for high speed runs or some top off sprints or prime them for the next activity where they're going to go a bit bigger, I always ask them like, is everybody feeling good today? Are you prepared? Are you ready to go full speed? Because that's what I want. And the last thing I want is for any of them to, be injured, or maybe they're functioning on low levels of sleep. Maybe they're not feeling it. For me, I'd rather get to the next week and have them healthy and fresh for the game. Maybe it's not their day that day. And that's where we can just approach the coaches and let them know, hey, this person is not feeling it today, or I can make the modification on the spot. Or if they're in the gym with me, and so on, just make the changes and make it appropriate for what they're feeling that day. Just tell them like, all right, can you go through the movements? Can we adjust some things on the fly? And you talked about other outliers, such as like high performers, someone that's not performing super well. Well, one conversation I've always had with Bobby when I was an intern back at RIPT in 2019 is always develop the general bell curve for programming, develop it for the overall 68% of where most of the group is. If you have someone that's really excelling, then maybe consider giving them some more advanced stuff to do. And then for someone that's not doing so well or not with the rest of the group yet, scale it back a bit. And there's always a lot of movement sometimes when we have some of our U14s train up with our U15s, because those programs do look different. So with that U14 player, probably not going to have them do everything exactly the same as the U15 players, at least not yet, but preparing them and cooking a slow roast so that they are doing everything safely and doing everything efficiently.
Oh, yeah, that makes complete sense to me. All right, so with the older players, the ones that are U18, uh, do you have players that advance on to the first team from there all that often? Or within the sports structure, do they get traded to other teams? Or how does it work that the onward progression from growing up through the academy to, I won't say graduation, but just yeah, maturation might be a better word for that. How do they mature into being a candidate or a contender for the first team?
Yeah, I mean, I believe right now we have about 8 graduates from our academy that have made it all the way to the first team level, and about 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken, that have made it from the academy to the second team level. So one of my favorite aspects of this job and my favorite aspect of our facility layout is that all of us are in this building. Academy, second team, and first team are all in this building, and we're able to just have good dialogue. We're always talking with one another. I can pop into second team office because we're pretty much right next to each other. Can pop into the first team offices. We're all talking with each other about how these players are doing. We have different projects that we're doing with each other, so we're tracking their progress from not only a physical perspective, but how many minutes they're playing too, because these coaches really care about how many minutes they're playing in these games, because that's how they develop into becoming really good soccer players. So
Yeah.
we're integrating like how many minutes they get. And when I'm sending out match reports to these coaches, always illustrating how many minutes they got, because they really care about that.
So when you've got the top level players, MLS, FC Cincinnati, in the same building, same structure, how often do the big guys come down and hang out with the U13 and U14? Are there any kind of coordinated events that come up where they help to inspire the youth by being there in the gym with them or anything like that? You guys just, little side note, I'm just curious about that.
Of course, we've had a couple of times where some pro players have come down, and just like I said, the fact that we have everybody in the same building. Our GM, Chris Albright, he attends our academy games. He's always looking at, our, performing players, seeing how they're doing, how they're progressing. There's always a lot of dialogue happening between them and Larry Sunderland, our director with player development in the academy. So all the time, these individuals are coming to, see these games, and they're taking notes of how they're doing. And then sometimes they're coming to trainings too. We've had a couple of pro players come down and maybe help out, kind of observe what's going on with us. We have one pro player that's doing a coaching course. So he's been helping out with our younger kids, like our U13s and U14s. So
Very
that's what I
cool.
love about this. I don't really sense any egos at all with that. Everybody's just willing to help out and just, go FCC for all, just, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
FCC for everyone, that kind of message.
And so when FC has a match, and are you playing a role in there, even though you're with the academy? Do they call you up and go, Mike, we need some help getting this all together? It's game day. Come on in. Do you go to all the matches, or what's your schedule like when it comes to that?
A lot of matches to be played here at the academy level. So on a given day, we'll have, hopefully everybody in house. If we have some home fixtures, we'll have like three of our teams here, like pretty much like three games going on, and then we'll have like our U13s and U14s playing at a different location, Milford High, but we'll have like our U15s, U16s, and U18s. So doing a lot of stuff for them, basically doing their game day warm-ups, recording how many minutes they get, doing sideline warm-ups, preparing them for, them to go onto the pitch, doing stuff with them during halftime, just doing like a passing activity, doing some sprints, replenishing them with some of our energy gels that we have for them, just things like that. In
And how
terms of
far
like
do you
the
guys have to travel for your academy? Sorry, like I'm wondering, do you stay in the greater Ohio region, or do your academy players have to go over state lines to Illinois, Indiana, wherever, Michigan?
a lot of bus rides for sure. So
Really?
we've bussed all the way to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We'll bus to St. Louis. We'll bus to Flex, which is in Maryland. Where else will we bus? Pretty much anywhere, but we won't bus to Minnesota. We'll fly out there. We'll fly to places like Dallas or Houston. We'll fly out to California, and we'll fly out to GA Cup, which is in Bradenton, Florida, IMG Academy.
All right. So what you're saying is you are on a bus for hours and hours with a bunch of teenage boys. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it's awesome.
oh, brother. Okay, we won't dive down that rabbit hole at all. But how about this? What about fueling? I asked Diego this a little bit too. When it comes to teenage boys, Chick-fil-A is, or out here it's In-N-Out Burger, and I've got one of my own, teenage boy that is, not a fast food restaurant, but trying to keep him in the mindset of competitive athlete, which he is. His sports are a bit different, but nonetheless, it's like what you put in your system is your gasoline. You don't want to throw sugar cubes into a gas tank because it's just going to sputter and die. So, how do you do it with your crew, with your teams, your athletes?
Yeah, I think it always comes from, us as coaches and the staff, and just always communicating to them about what's important to put in your body, just knowing what's at stake. We want to win all these games. So we always tell them like your body is your shrine, all these kind of things. And every time we like stop at like a gas station, they always have a choice. They could really go out of their way to look for items that are healthier, or they could easily just go to the candy stuff. And I think our coaches do an awesome job when they see some players take like a Hostess donut. Like, do you think you should be doing that? Or do you think you should possibly, consider the snacks that we have on hand with like our fruits, our granola bars, maybe save your money. So we always question them like, and always challenge them to make the best decisions they possibly can. Maybe instead of buying a Hostess donut or Skittles, even though it's delicious, for me, I don't feel like that because I know all the chemicals that are in there, but for them, it tastes awesome. And admittedly, they
So
do taste great. But for me, I'm always thinking about, okay, a lot of chemicals in those kind of items and maybe not the best because they don't offer all the nutrients that you could get in all the natural items that you could get from fruits and granola bars and even protein bars, or thinking about what kind of drinks they could get, maybe get a Gatorade or Gatorade instead of getting like a soda or an
sure.
energy
What's
drink.
better than it's this is good, but what might be a better choice? You know, you're making a
Exactly.
good choice. Let's try and make a great choice. I get you. So you mentioned you do have kind of supplements and drinks on site at your training facility there. But what about whole food too? Do you guys have like a kitchen, like a staff in there that supplies first team, second team, maybe even and leave some stuff out for the academy? Or how does it work with that? Just mainly product sponsors such as maybe Gatorade? You just got a cooler of that or what?
Yeah, we like during practices, we supply water and sometimes like Powerade for our players, but that's pretty much as far as we'll go and as far as our budget allows at this moment.
Sure.
Um,
So you rely mainly on the parents and the families to provide for the kids when they get there.
Correct. So if there's like an emergency or if they communicate to us like, I'm pretty hungry, do you have something? I'll go out of my way to make sure that they get some kind of energy. But on a daily basis, we're not giving them foods on a daily basis unless
Sure.
they're like, I could use some.
Okay, and then I know academies across the board, the MLS and other sports for that matter, are limited with their resources, and they want to provide as much as they can for their valued athletes. So that goes without saying. With that, what about tutors? Because these kids are going to school, and basically, as soon as school is over, they're jumping in a car, a bus, or train. They're commuting all the way to your training facility, and they could be traveling for quite a long distance through some major traffic, and that takes maybe they'll do their schoolwork on the way and on the way home or something, and they're really dedicated. But do you have any type of educational support built in, or is that something that's not quite there yet and hoping to be?
So what we've done is we've just hired a mental performance coach, David Da Silva. So he started out by doing, weekly lectures with all of, the younger kids. So basically teaching
Awesome.
them some skills in that department. Megan Vanes, our player care specialist, also works with our players sometimes if they do need that extra work with tutoring. As far as I know, I don't think she does it like all the time, but as much as she can, she's got her hands tied too with doing a bunch of things for the kids, just trying to arrange homestays, trying to, communicate with them about like their grades or school. So she's doing all that she can to help them out from the academic side.
Fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
I was actually expecting you to say no, we don't have really anything for them, but you do. And a mental skills coach, man, that is phenomenal. I mean, don't you wish you had a mental skills coach when you were 14 or 15? I mean, what a great resource that is. That's incredible. So I know that your discipline and your devotion, your passion keeps you moving on a path and trying to help as many uh but that path, where's that path leading you? Maybe you found your spot and you want to be here for the rest of your life, and I will say, hey, that's great because not many people actually achieve that place. But most of us were like, okay, this is great. I feel like I've benefited the people around me. Let's see where else I can go and carry this on. Do you have a do you have a kind of path or an idea about that yourself?
I'm always just working as hard as I possibly can for the people that I'm working with right now, always staying present, and just always reading upon the latest research, doing the certifications, and I'm even going on Duolingo on like a 79-day streak with learning Spanish.
Right
So just,
on.
yeah, so I'm just, working on learning Spanish and hoping to add that to my, arsenal for learning how to communicate with players in a different way. Because if they could get more comfortable, then that's a win for sure. Um, Even just learn more about what I can do from a physical side to make it more simple for these players and all those kinds of things.
Well, you just mentioned the word Arsenal, and my ADD just went into British Premier League instantly. And I'm thinking, well, I wonder if Mike connects with guys over in British Premier League, the sports scientists over there, or their academy players. Do you have any connections with some of the guys over there? Do you have colleagues over there at all?
Not yet, but Gary Walker used to, be our director here. He was our director. Last year he's over at Brighton right now. So yeah, that's definitely a connection right there. He did an awesome job with, allowing us the opportunity to even have this sports science. He was the one that basically made the contract happen with PlayerData and allowing us to track as many players. And we worked very hard to just develop this FCC for all from a performance side with keeping things as uniform as possible and always making time to sit down and discuss what I could do better with my role here with all the kids, how we can just maximize the time that we have on a daily basis.
I love it, Mike. That's awesome. And so
Yeah.
you mentioned too, you really like you scour research journals looking for more information, but you've got a tremendous amount of data at your own disposal. Are you doing any research projects yourself? You doing any studies with some of the players? Anything that piques your interest that you might want to do if you're not already?
At this moment, not at the moment currently, but I mean, questions I'm always asking ourselves and even comparing our data to the second team and the first team is how much is too much, how much is too little. So like comparing our data to other academies. Um, I've looked at other research papers to kind of look at what other EPL academies do over there,
Ah,
comparing our data to what ours looks like. So that's like one of the first things I did when I crossed over like the first 8 months. At the eighth month mark, I believe, or it was 6 months, that's when we had every player tracked. Then we could consolidate all that data and just kind of compare and contrast where we were at and just kind of go from there.
and
And
did
also
you
just
find
like,
anything interesting?
I mean, the interesting part about it is that, with Costas here, he has tremendous experience with working across academies in his previous experience, working overseas, working at, the domestic level with New York Red Bulls. So I'm always talking to him about what our numbers looks like and what their numbers look like, how he kind of sees the data, how he kind of sees the pitch sizes. So
Right on.
he's awesome. He's a great resource. He's always good to talk to, even Phil over here. So always getting
Ah,
some
so
ideas
cool.
about how to, you know, get the best train that we can for these guys.
Sounds like you're in heaven, Mike.
Yeah, for sure. I'm having a lot of fun here. There's a lot to do, but these kids make it worth it.
And then for the academy season, what are we talking? Where are you right now in your season?
We're about to face Chicago Fire, and right after that, we'll be going off to GA Cup. So we'll play 7 games in 10 days. And then after that, players will get about 3 days of rest. They'll get a couple of training sessions after that. Then we'll face another team and then go off to flex. Have a couple
Wow.
of games
And
after that.
is your girlfriend incarcerated in some prison? I'm just wondering because I mean, what does she think about all this traveling? Or does she go, "Oh, honey, that's great because there's some great places I'd like to visit, and it just so happens you're going into those. I'm going to travel with you."
I
No.
mean, right now she's incarcerated at a hospital because she's a nurse, working with cardiology. She just got a promotion, so she's doing great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she's doing awesome in that. But the topic of talking about maximizing time with your spouse, it's very important to talk about. So for me, what I'm trying to do every day is just when I'm driving back home to her house, I'm always calling her first, just so that we can maximize the time that we communicate with one another. So I think that's super important to do. And then we always look forward to trips that we want to do. We have July off, we have some of December off, so we schedule some trips that we can possibly do, uh, across those months. But we're always maximizing the time that we have with each other, just spending time at home or going on excursions. So,
Beautiful. Well, this time has just cruised on by. Of course, when you find subjects that you're really interested in, that has a tendency to happen. I can't thank you enough for carving out a little bit of your already overloaded schedule to spend some time chatting and sharing what you've been doing at FC Cincinnati. And man, I wish you nothing but the best and a strong season, a really great finish. And if people want to connect with you, of course, LinkedIn is a great resource for guys in our field, and that's how I connect with a lot of colleagues, including yourself. But what about Instagram, social media, TikTok or X or whatever?
yeah, I use Instagram. So my Instagram is Coach MB Brown. That's about it. And I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so I appreciate you making that connection on LinkedIn. So if you want to reach out to me over LinkedIn or Instagram, feel free to hit me up, and I'd be more than happy to start some dialogue and go from there.
And are there any positions open within FC Cincinnati you're looking to fill right now? So maybe somebody in the audience would be like, I'm going to Cincinnati.
I think at this moment, we're not looking for positions, but with that being said, you never know, because you
Okay.
never know with our field. So things might open up with, the academy season will be done before we know it in June. So maybe in the future, something will open up. There's always things opening up. So
Right on. Okay. Well, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate coming on. And again, I wish you nothing but the best.
appreciate you, Rocky. Thank you so much.
And that brings another one to an end. You guys were great. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Mike, for coming on, as well as FC Cincinnati for making this happen. Remember, I've got a whole bunch of things on my website, from courses online as well as in person. Find out where I'll be presenting, and you can maybe pick up yourself a foot wedge kit. It's got a poster inside as well as a few foot wedges to help you with stability, mobility, from rehab to return to performance. And you can learn more if you want to join me at the 3-day functional summit, and the Perform Better one, that is performbetter.com, Providence, Chicago, Long Beach. And you can also check out the NSCA's National Conference. That's going to be happening July 16th and 19th in Kansas City, Missouri. I'll be putting on a workshop all about open and closed chain foot mobilization. So join me there. Pick up my book, Return to Center, before you get there, in case you have some problem sleeping. That'll help.